Your Rabbi says, so in this week's Parsha, we have the Pasuk Tachas, Asher lo yovadetos Hashem Elokecha, B'simcha u'b'tuv leivov meiroiv koil, v'ovadeto es oivecha, Asher yishalchenu Hashem b'cho. Then the Pasuk is because you didn't serve Hashem, your God, B'simcha u'b'tuv leivov, with happiness and with goodness of heart, meiroiv koil. Meiroiv koil is when everything was abundant. Yeah, Meiroiv koil, you had it all, and you were lo yavadetas Hashem Elokecha, and therefore the oynish is that v'avadeta esayvecha, you'll serve your enemies. So the Meiroiv koil in the Sefer, in the end of the pasuk, is clearly about the circumstances in which the Klal Yisrael was. They had everything, Meiroiv koil. And they didn't serve Hashem. But the words B'simcha B'tuv Leivov is not clear if this connects to the beginning of the pasuk or it connects to the end of the pasuk. What do I mean to say? You could say that it's Tachas Hashem Elokecha Hashem Elokecha, because you didn't serve Hashem. When you were B'simcha B'tuv Leivov Meiroiv koil. In other words, B'simcha B'tuv Leivov is part of the given circumstances in which you found yourself. You were B'simcha B'tuv Leivov Meiroiv koil, and nevertheless you were lo yavadetas esayvecha, and therefore it's a grave sin that you were lo yavadetas Hashem Elokecha when you were B'simcha B'tuv Leivov Meiroiv koil. But there's another way to read the pasuk, that it's Tachas Asher lo yavadetas Hashem Elokecha B'simcha B'tuv Leivov, that you didn't serve Hashem with gladness and with goodness of heart, Meiroiv koil, when you were in a situation of roiv koil. So it's not clear if the B'simcha B'tuv Leivov connects to the Reisha Dikra, to the beginning of the pasuk, and it's describing the service of Hashem which didn't take place, B'simcha B'tuv Leivov, or it's describing the given circumstances, just like the roiv koil. You were in a matzav of Simcha B'tuv Leivov and you didn't serve Hashem. Now the Rambam in the end of Hilchos Lulav, L'chora says mefurish like the second reading. The Rambam says hasimche sheyismach adam ba'asiyas hamitzvah u'ba'avas hakel shetziva bohen avoide gdoilohi. The simcha is an avoide gdoilo. V'chol hamoinei atzmoi misimcha zoi, somebody that holds back from the joy of avodas Hashem, ro'oi lihipora mimenu. He's worthy of a oynish. So it's clear from the Rambam's reading that we're not talking about someone who didn't serve the Rebbeinu Shalom. He did serve the Rebbeinu Shalom, but that service lacked joy and happiness. And therefore the Rambam is saying that the simcha sheyismach ha'adam ba'asiyas ha'mitzvahs is an avodah gedolah. And somebody that lacks the joy in kiyum ha'mitzvahs, even if he's mekayim mitzvahs, is worthy of the teichecha. And so it's also mavur in the Rabbeinu Yoina in the beginning of Perek Ein Oimdim in Mesechtes Brachos. And so it's also in the Rabbeinu Bachye on this pasuk. However, there's another place in the Rambam where it seems that he reads the pasuk the first way, that the pasuk is talking about somebody who's not being oived the Rebbeinu Shalom at all. And that's the Rambam in Hilchos Talmud Torah, Perek Gimel, Halacha Yud Gimel. The Rambam says, "V'chein kol misha efshaloi lasoik b'Torah ve'eino yosik." Somebody that has the ability to learn and he doesn't learn. Oy shekara v'shana u'pireish lahavlei oilam v'hiniach talmudoi v'zonchoi. He abandoned his learning. Harei zeh b'chlal boizet v'Hashem. Amru chachamim kol ha'mevatel es haTorah me'oisher soifoi levatla me'oini. Kol ha'mekayim es haTorah me'oini soifoi lekayma me'oisher. V'inyin zeh mefurish u'b'Torah. Harei hoi metachas shelo yavadetas Hashem Elokecha b'simcha b'tuv leivov meiroiv koil v'avadetas esayvecha. So here the Rambam is reading this pasuk as a pasuk that's referring to somebody that's mevatel es haTorah, or he was shona kara v'shona upirish lahavlei olam hazeh. So it's somebody that's not learning, that's not observing mitzvahs, not somebody that is learning and is observing mitzvahs, and he's lacking the joy. The Rambam L'chor over here is reading the pasuk. The situation that you found yourself in was circumstances of simcha v'tov leivav v'roiv koil, and you weren't. And this l'chor is a contradiction with the Rambam in Hilchos Lulav, who clearly reads the pasuk as referring to somebody that is being mekayim Torah mitzvahs, and he's just lacking the simcha and the tov leivav. So it would seem that the key to answering the stira in the Rambam is in a third Rambam. The Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva, in the beginning of Perek Tes, has a whole arichas about the fact that the schar and oynish, the ultimate schar and oynish for mitzvahs and averis, will be given only in olam haba. And then the Rambam continues and he writes, Mahu shekosov im tishmu yagia lochem v'im lo yishmu yikra eschem. That if you'll listen to the mitzvahs, you'll receive blessings, and if you won't listen, this and that will happen to you. V'chol oisom hadvarim ba'olam hazeh. And all those things that the Torah discusses in this context are in this world, going soiva, v'ro'ov, umilchama, v'sholom, etc. So the Rambam says, Kol oisom hadvarim hoyu v'yiyu. This is real. It will happen in this world. It happened and it will happen. V'afal pikein, nevertheless, ein oison hatoives hein soif matan schoron shel mitzvahs. Those promises that the Torah promises in this world, that's not the soif matan schoron shel mitzvahs. V'loy oison ha'ro'os hein soif hanekame shenoikmin mei oiver al kol ha'mitzvahs. Elo kachi atzos shel dvar. This is the way, and the Rambam explains. HaKadosh Baruch Hu nosan lanu es haTorah. Zoi eitz ha'chayim. V'chol ha'oiseh kol ha'kosuv bo. Somebody that does everything it says in the Torah. V'yoidoi deya gmura nechoina. Zoicha bo l'chai olam habo. U'lefi goydel ma'isa v'chochmosei hu zoicha. V'hivtichonu b'Torah. She'im nasa oisa b'simcha u'b'toivas nefesh. V'nege b'chochmosa tomid. She'yosir mimenu kol ha'dvarim ha'moinim oisanu. Mila soisa, kegoin choli, umilchama, verov, v'yashpi alonu kol ha'toives ha'mechazkim es yodenu lasas es haTorah. So the Rambam says that all the good and bad that it says in the Torah is not schar v'oinish, but the Rebbeinu Shalom promises that if you keep Torah, then the Rebbeinu Shalom will give you what it takes, that you should be able to keep the Torah. In other words, he will facilitate your avodas Hashem. And if you will not keep Torah, then you'll lose those emtsoim that allow you, that enable you to serve the Rebbeinu Shalom. So it's not the schar and the oynish for mitzvahs, it's just whether you will have what enables you to be mekayim Torah mitzvahs, or you will lose what enables you to be mekayim Torah mitzvahs. And then the Rambam concludes, Hu shekosav b'Torah. So now at first glance, it would seem that here in Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam once again is interpreting the pasuk to be talking about somebody that's loy avadita, period. Not that he's lacking the happiness and joy, but he's a loy avadita. Just like he said in Hilchos Talmud Torah, because the Rambam says, she'im nazoy v'haTorah mida'atenu v'na'asoik b'havlei hazman yosir min ha'oizvim kol toives olam hazeh. And the Rambam brings the pasuk of tachas asher lo yavadita. So it would seem that we're talking about somebody that's not avadita. But I say that lefi zeh, we need to understand why the Rambam mentions b'toich dvorav several times the inyan of happiness. The Rambam says, Shem nasa oisa besimcha ubetoivas nefesh, etc. And then he says again, Im avadetem es Hashem besimcha, v'chulei. In order that we should get the toivos that are mechazkim es yodeinu lasois es kol haTorah, right? It's enough to serve the Rebbeinu Shalom. Then we'll have the things that enable us to serve him. Why did the Rambam insert into this discussion twice the idea of simcha and toivas nefesh? Truth is that this entire shtickle that the Rambam says over here in Perik Tes Hilchos Tshuva appears also in the Rambam in the Pirish HaMishnayos and Perik Chelik, and over there he doesn't mention simcha. Not only that he doesn't mention simcha, but when he quotes the pasuk, he says Tachas asher lo yavadeta Hashem Elokecha, and he omits the hemshuk of the pasuk. So it would seem pashtus that the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva is saying the same thing. We're talking about somebody that's not serving the Rebbeinu Shalom, and the Rebbeinu Shalom will take away from him what everything he has that enables him to serve the Rebbeinu Shalom. But nevertheless, you see that the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva did mention several times the idea of simcha and toivas nefesh. So it would seem that the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva is talking from both sides of his mouth. Is he reading the pasuk to mean lo yavadeta period, or is he reading the pasuk lo yavadeta b'simcha b'tuv leivav? So I think that the underlying principle is like this. The Rambam says in Hilchos Talmud Torah that the pasuk of Tachas asher lo yavadeta teaches us the idea that the Mishnah says that kol ha'mevatl es haTorah mei oisher soifoi levatlo mei oini. Somebody that is mevatl Torah when he has money, when he has ashirus, he will end up being mevatl Torah mei oini. He's going to lose his money. And that's l'chorah because the Meroiv Koil, and the Rambam brings the pasuk of Tachas asher lo yavadeta. So who shomru chachamim? The Meroiv Koil in this pasuk, an abundance of good, of everything. That's the matzav of Mei Oisher that the Mishnah is talking about. And because it's lo yavadeta, so you will lose that Oisher. That's why the Rambam is saying that it says over here what it says in the Mishnah, that kol ha'mevatl es haTorah mei Oisher soifoi levatlo mei oini. But nevertheless, when the Rambam is mefarish the pasuk, I say he's mefarish the pasuk that b'simcha b'tuv leivav are describing the way one serves the Rebbeinu Shalom and not describing the given circumstances. Meaning that the reason that dafka over here, there's a taina, where's your simcha b'tuv leivav? That's because when somebody has roiv koil, that enables him, that makes it possible that he should be able to serve the Rebbeinu Shalom with joy because he's in a matzav of Osher. Now, if he doesn't utilize that enabler to serve the Rebbeinu Shalom with joy, then that is taken away from him. Meaning that the idea that the Mishnah says, Kol ha'mevatl es haTorah mei Osher, it's somebody that's mevatl es haTorah mei Osher. In other words, it's not just that he's an Osher and he's mevatl es haTorah. There's a certain madrega of kiyum haTorah mei Osher. When you have it all, I mean, you're expected to serve the Rebbeinu Shalom with joy. Obviously, the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't have the same expectations from somebody who has nothing that he has to somebody that has everything. And therefore we say that Meroiv Koil is somebody that's in a state of Osher. And therefore, if he's Mevatl Torah, he's considered a Mevatl Torah, not only if he's Mevatl Torah, period, but if he's Mevatl the Torah Me'osher. What's the Bittul Torah Me'osher? That's the Bittul Torah where you learn Torah, but not with Simcha V'Tuv Leivav. And therefore, you mevatl es haTorah mei Osher, you'll become an ani. An ani can't learn. An ani could also learn. But the ani doesn't have what enables him to be mekayim haTorah mei Osher. In other words, he doesn't have what enables him to be b'simcha b'tuv leivav. And therefore, if you're in a matzav of roiv koil and you're lacking the simcha, so you're considered a mevatl es haTorah mei Osher, you're mevatl Torah on the level that you would be able to be Mekayim Torah in your given situation, and therefore you lose that those facilitators. And since the entire Schar V'Oinish in this world is just about the Rebbeinu Shalom giving us the circumstances that facilitate Avodas Hashem, as the Rambam said. So somebody who was given what enables him to serve the Rebbeinu Shalom Simcha B'Tov Leivov, and he doesn't use it, so he loses that. And Mamela, it goes together with the Rambam in Hilchis Lulav, because the Rambam in Hilchis Lulav says, Kol ha-moineya atzmoi misimcha zu ro'ui lihipora mimenu. It's a very interesting lashon. The Rambam says somebody that holds himself back from this simcha of serving the Rebbeinu Shalom b'simcha. What do you mean he holds himself back? Obviously, the Rambam is hinting that he's not talking about somebody that's not capable of being b'simcha b'tov leivov. Sometimes a person is in a matziv where it's hard for him to actually enjoy Torah mitzvahs. And he's not a ro'ui lihipara mimenu. The Rambam says somebody that's meinei atzmai misimcha zu, ro'ui lihipara mimenu, which means somebody that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave him the circumstances that enable him to be avadetos Hashem Elokecha b'simcha b'tov leivov, because he's in a matzav of roiv koil, and nevertheless he's meinei atzmai misimcha zu. He's the one that's ro'ui lihipara mimenu. But often that the Rambam in Hilchos Shuvah and the Rambam in Hilchos Talmud Torah and the Rambam in Hilchos Lulav are all saying the same thing. The fact that the Rambam says in Hilchos Talmud Torah that it's talking about a Mavatal Torah, it's not talking about a Mavatal Torah Ligamri. It's talking about a Mavatal Torah Me'oshe. And that's a Madrega in limited Torah. And that's really the Madrega of Simcha B'Tov Leivov that the Osher enables. Now Rashi on the Pasuk says, Me'roiv Kol. Ba'oid sheyeh lecha kol tov. While you have, Me'roiv Kol means while you have kol tov. So the Maharal in the Gur Aryeh comments on this Rashi. He says, the ein pirushoy shelo yavadeta b'simcha b'tov leivov b'shvil shehoyo lecha roiv kol. That Rashi is coming to say, don't read the pasuk, that it means that you will Hashem Elokecha b'simcha b'tov leivov may roiv koil, that the roiv koil caused you to be not oived as Hashem Elokecha. B'shvil shohoy lecha roiv koil, b'shvil zeh hayisa meva'et b'hakodesh baruch hu. Because Rashi is against that shot. She'ein roiv toiva siba shelo yavdu oisa b'simcha. In other words, we do find vayishman yishurun vayivot. We find that sometimes somebody has it too good, and therefore he abandons Avodas Hashem. However, so sometimes having Roiv Koil could be a reason for not being Mekayim mitzvahs. However, says the Maharal, it can't be a reason for lacking Simcha in Avodas HaMitzvahs. And therefore Rashi refuses to learn that May Roiv Koil means because you had Roiv Koil, and Rashi says it means while you had Roiv Koil. So the Maharal says, in other words, the Pashut Pshat would be May Roiv Koil means because of the Roiv Koil. And Rashi is saying, don't learn like that, because Rashi has a problem with that Pshat, because Roiv Koil can't be a reason for not having Simcha, and therefore Rashi says, the Maharal says, I don't know why Rashi was forced to learn this way. In other words, the Maharal is not so happy with Rashi's pshat. He says Meiroiv is mashma, that it comes from the Roiv Koil that you didn't serve Hashem. Not that Meiroiv Koil just means while you have the Roiv Koil. Lama lo yefarish k'mashmoi. Tachas asher lo yavadas Hashem lokecha b'simcha b'shvil shoyel l'cha Roiv Koil. Ubishvil zeh hoya roya l'chol ha'avdei b'simcha. Ulefichach v'avadas soivecha. V'hashte hamem shel meiroiv t'shamish b'mokai min. Ki min roiv kol shoya l'chem hoya l'chem l'avdei b'simcha. So the Maharal is actually saying what was saying the Rambam learned in this pasuk, that Meirov means from the Rov, not while you had the Rov. But the pshat is, it's not that from the Rov came your not having simcha, but from the Rov koil comes the chiyuv to have the simcha. Meirov koil is a reason that it's expected of you, that you should be avadet to Hashem Elokecha v'simcha b'tov leivov, and you lack that simcha b'tov leivov that should come from the Rov koil. And then the Maharal actually continues, and he says that maybe Rashi really means what he's saying, and Rashi is just mafarish the Inyan HaMikra, not the Pirush HaMikra, meaning that when Rashi says ba'oisha hoyalacha, that's the Inyan HaMikra. In other words, we're talking about a situation where you had Rov Koil. But the Pirush HaMikra is that Mei Rov Koil is the Mechayiv for Simcha, and therefore the lack of Simcha is an Aveira in the situation where you have Rov Koil, because Mei Rov Koil you should have the Simcha. So, in any case, that's what it seems is the Rambam's shot in the Besimcha B'tov Leivov, Mei Rov Koil. I just want to read to you something that's really fascinating. In there's the Reb Hershel Zaks, who was the son of Reb Mendel Zaks, who was the son-in-law of the Chafetz Chaim. He writes as follows: Eich shehoya, that Reb Mendel Zaks, the son-in-law of the Chafetz Chaim, described. Eich shehoya Chafetz Chaim oirech es cheshbonos nafsho shamati me'avi. That this Reb Hershel Zaks heard from his father, Reb Mendel Zaks, how the Chafetz Chaim would make a cheshbon hanefesh. V'ani mekave she'ani echzor al zeh pochis hayoyse k'moy shemati. I hope that I'll be able to repeat this more or less the way I heard it. Rak akatze ektzas, but I'll make it a bit shorter. Mikivin she'Chafetz Chaim hoya oirich b'chol pam cheshbon nafshoy bein sha'asayim v'chetzi shoyz at sholish v'chetzi arba shoyz. The Chafetz Chaim used to have a kviyas every day, up to 4 hours. Yeah, from 2.5 hours up to 4 hours, he would make a cheshbon hanefesh. Yeah, and he still had time to learn. Now he says like this: Darko shel Chafetz Chaim heim b'limudoy v'heim b'seidem musa shaloi hoya ki'ilu dinu dvarim im chaverei hayoyshev mulu. He was always talking as if he has a chavrusa in front of him, even though there was no chavrusa in front of him. But he would talk it all out as he's talking it out to a chavrusa. Umishelo yoda, somebody that would be listening from the outside and he didn't know. Hoya choshev shachafetz chaim yoshev v'moed echad liyad hashulchan. He would think the Chafetz Chaim is sitting with someone. V'dinu dvarim b'neim. Af echad liyhela b'daitoi shachafetz chaim medaber el atzmoi. Nobody would imagine the Chafetz Chaim is really talking to himself. Mipnei shehoya medaber hakoil b'derech she'ela u'tshuva. Okay. Now, v'kach hoya seder v'iduyoi. This was the seder havidui of the Chafetz Chaim. He would go up to the attic. He would describe as if he's walking in the street and and he meets a Yid. The other Yid asks him, Yisrael Meir, how are you, Yisrael Meir? And I answer, Baruch Hashem, day toiv, ganz good, pretty good. The other Yid gives him a pat on the shoulder and he says, at the chazak bedatcho Yisrael Meir. Yehudi chazak, you're a starker mensch. It's amazing. This is the Chafetz Chaim talking to himself. So he says, Kacha, lo yoshanti toiv kol halayla. I didn't sleep well last night. Kamti outside, I got up on the left side. You look a little pale. Take a rest, and you'll get better. And then, okay, he's talking about himself. So the people that come to visit, they say, what happened to you? It's fatigue, I'm tired. I have to sleep for a few days and get better. Yes, so this is the Chafetz Chaim talking to himself on a daily basis, describing the end of his life. The matzav is not getting better. The Rebbe asks, what would you like to eat? Machal zeh or machal acher? we have to call a doctor. Menasim Litzchis is it, try to push off the doctor. It becomes very serious. Okay, Masminim is a Chevre Kadisha. And now you hear the Chafetz Chaim saying the whole vidui, because he's, imagining himself on his deathbed. Yes, this is the time of his death. Magiim shuv anshe Chevre Kadisha u'metarmes hames u'kedarkom shel Chevre Kadisha. I'm not so familiar. Toivchin le al gabay v'oimrim. Yeah, they bang down on his dead body and they say, "Hu hoya Yehudi chazak b'daitzay beruchay." He was a starker person. Mi helal daitzay shekol kach ma'ir hu yipotzim b'nayil. Who imagined that he would die just like that? V'noisen le'oit fika al gabay v'oimrim b'bdichusa. They say laughing, "Tiru ma korah." Look what happened to Nebuch. Okay. Now, listen. He'll be shulayat tachrichin. Vahivilu lebeis akvaris. Vahilidu elei kever. V'shoychim choil. V'avonim matminim. V'ayimrim kaddish. U'lechore kan hoyot tzorech lovei kvar el hamenuche ve'el ha'nachla. He's in the grave. Aval doifkin olav bekever. Misha. Yeah, there's a bang on his grave. They say, who's there? Yisroel Meir. He answers. Boyal bezin shel mayla limsedim v'chen. Oh, u'magiyim shnei malachim v'toifsin oisei v'holchim lebezin shel mayla. K'shemagiz lebezin shel mayla, they ask him, Yisroel Meir, ma ta'omer al kach, ma ta'omer al kach. What do you say about this thing you did? What do you say about this thing you didn't do? V'alzeh oine kach, v'alzeh oine kach. Mamish chakiro hamitis k'moi b'beis mishpot. Acha kach machrizin, shekol mi sheyoidea, any malachim that have know anything good that the man did, they should come and say, he has a big bag of mitzvahs. Baruch Hashem, oid mitzvah, oid schus. Achakach machrizin, yovoy hakategor. Kol mi sheyodea lo choiv, yovoy. The Yoiv. The Shaimin HaChafetz Chaim maskil whisper oid avere, magia le'eser, meya, elef. But now listen, the Iker ha'averos sheloi, what was the Iker averos of the Chafetz Chaim? Kach shomati me'ovi. Iker ha'averos sheloi hoyu al heder simchas ha'mitzvahs. The lack of simcha in mitzvahs. Mitzvah zu lo yasor b'simcha. ומצווה זו לא יגמרי בשלימוס, ומצווה אחרת היחוסה בקסס ההווה כאלה סוגי עברס. אבל העיקר שאצלוינם, שלא יעשה המצווה בשמחס הלב כמו שצורך. Anyway, there's a whole hemshich to this story. It appears in the Meir Einei Yisrael. But the point is that you see a man like the Chafetz Chaim, he felt that his main avera is the lack of simchas mitzvahs. I mean, it just tells you, I mean, how the avadatos Hashem Elokecha b'simcha is such an important thing. Now, I just say the Chafetz Chaim was a poor Jew that lived in a little shtetl. I mean, with the Chafetz Chaim never made kiddush on wine Friday night because he couldn't afford wine. And therefore, he had a very small becher, but he only used it because he relied on a very small becher because he only used it for Kiddusha Rabbah, which is in Ganzna the Rabbanon or maybe less on Shabbos morning, because on Friday night he made Kiddush on the Challah because he couldn't afford. So I'm saying he wasn't like a very Meirov Koil kind of person. And nevertheless, he demanded of himself Simcha v'tov leivav. All the more, I mean, we live in a time of Roiv Koil Bemis that the Klal Yisrael never was in a situation of such Roiv Koil like the Klal Yisrael is today. So Avada, in our day and age, there's a tremendous tviyah that we should be Oived es Hashem b'simcha v'tov leivav. Listen, some people will say that because we have so many distractions, I mean, Miroiv Koil, that's why we don't have simcha. But you see, the Maral says that no, it can't be. That Roiv Koil cannot be a siba for the lack of simcha in Avodas Hashem. So, listen, That's what he holds. So we should try. We should try, obviously, to enhance and strengthen our emotional connection with mitzvahs, and get ourselves excited about the mitzvah secha tirdoif nafshi, that we should be chasing after mitzvahs, and we should have a geschmack in doing mitzvahs and learning Torah, and we should be avadatas Hashem Elokecha b'simcha, and that will undo the toichecha. You know, this tzaddik ches klolos in Torah's Kohanim, and Rashi says that the tzaddik ches, not in Torah's Kohanim, I mean Mishnah Torah, and Rashi says that the tzaddik ches kvosim that we bring on Sukkot are keneged the tzaddik ches klolos. You see, Sukkot is man simchosenu, so that undoes the tzaddik ches klolos, because the tzaddik ches klolos come from the tachas asher lo yavadeto es Hashem Elokecha b'simcha b'tuv leivov. By the way, the Arizal has another reading of this pasuk. The Arizal says that one should serve the Rebbeinu Shalom b'simcha b'tuv leivov. He should have more simcha and joy from avodas Hashem than he has from anything in this world. And he says, "Tachas asher lo yavantos Hashem Elokecha b'simcha b'tuv leivov meiroiv kol." In other words, that you should have had more pleasure and enjoyment and happiness from Kiyum HaMitzvahs than you have from anything from Roiv Kol. And that, according to the Arizal, the fact that you, even if you have simcha, but you don't have the simcha that's Roiv Kol, it's already a serious problem. But in any case, you know, there are places where it says that the Arizal said that he was zoiche to all his madregas mikoyach simcha shel mitzvah. So, Rabbi Isai, we're going to begin saying slichas, and I mean it's a time that some people get depressed. So I'm saying no, that's not the way to go. I mean it's the truth is, asking for forgiveness is about taking responsibility, and taking responsibility is really something that's very empowering, because a cheres sheita v'kotten, is not responsible. So if we're responsible, obviously we are capable of making decisions, and we are significant, and we are important, and we have what it takes. So it's we might feel bad for failures, but as long as we take upon ourselves to work on moving in the right direction, so we could be mekayim the mitzvah of tshuva, like all other mitzvahs, ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. I mean, all mitzvahs have to be done b'simcha, and the tshuva is also a mitzvah. So obviously, it can be done b'simcha. Okay, I wish you all a good Shabbos, and all the best.